G'day everyone. I've been wrestling over the past few days over what podcast to release to you awesome people. I've got a few in the bag, a couple of snippets and one on motivation that's really excellent. However, I found that when I was doing the intros, I kept wanting to say more. So I thought instead of releasing some of those, and as I say, there to come, I'd just sit down and get some thoughts out of my head. It's weird times at the moment. You know, when I thought about this unsupervised, I thought, what am I going to name it? And weird times is the only thing that came to me. I saw my first podcast meme the other day, and it sort of went, we're three white guys with average opinions and average experiences. Let's start a podcast. And look, I think it's quite interesting, you know, this being episode 76 it will be, and there's, you know, I've got up to 80 in the bag already. And I've been doing this for 2 years now. However, it seems to have exploded in Australia. You know, when I started 2 years ago, it was hard to find a podcast in Australia. And since then, Podcast One, and which is basically the radio station still trying to keep their audiences, and a number of other independent podcasts have started over the last 12 months. And I suppose it has become a bit of a meme. And look, that's one way to look at it, you know what I mean? However, the other way to look at it is that, you know, whether it be boys or girls or gender fluid unicorns starting their own podcasts, they're trying to communicate. They're trying to get their information out there and their opinion out there. Excuse me. And that's actually very important. You know, whether or not they last or whether or not these podcasts are, you know, any good. I mean, and that's all up to the perception of whoever's listening to them. You know, some people may listen to this one and not think it's very good. However, other people do, you know. And it's also quite interesting that I've had a lot of people, you know, the amount of listener feedback that I've had in the last 3 months has been really awesome. And the last 3 months have back-to-back been the best months we've ever had in the podcast. So it's actually growing and reaching more people, which is very, very cool. However, I don't think making a meme about podcasting, you know, and look, I get it. You know what I mean? I do get it because, as I've said before, I know nothing. You know, I'm only applying my experience and the guys that are willing to come on and share their experience to them. So it's like, again, is this podcast any good? I think so. The people that have downloaded this, you awesome listeners, you seem to think so. And the fact that the podcast is growing month on month, not only in Australia but internationally, seems to me we're doing something right. You know, considering that I've put little to no advertising in this, and it's been very word of mouth, and it's purely just a passion project for myself. However, podcasting in itself is not an easy task. You know, I think, as I say, you know, I've got up to 80 episodes that I will release, and there's probably another 5 or 6 that haven't made the cut. You know, probably more if I think about it. And the reality is, you know, the stats coming out of the podcast universe are 47% of podcasts on Apple iTunes haven't released a new episode since mid-2018. And it still stands that most podcasts don't make it to episode 13. I think a lot of people think this might be a money grab, you know what I mean? Or it might be, you know, it's just a bit of fun and you'll just get listeners all of a sudden, you know what I mean? That's not what it's about. You know, I think again, with everything, and we've talked about this a lot over the time of the podcast, is that it's about the grind. It's about the continuing to turn up all the time, every time, you know, and having the motivation and the discipline to do that. It's not easy. You know, I can tell you that there's been times, you know, even this year where I've thought about, do I want to continue to do this? And it's quite funny how the universe does this. You know, every time I think, oh, you know, it's a bit hard and all that sort of stuff, I get a listener email out of the blue, or someone DMs me and says, thank you very much for your podcast. It really helped me, you know, keep doing what you're doing. You know, I get someone else come out of the woodwork and go, oh, can I come on your podcast and share my opinion? And that's so cool, you know, and that's what keeps me going, you know, because it's hard maintaining this, because the reality is, you know, the few sponsors that I've talked about on this show, you know, Shamans of the Dow and Holographic Kinetics, Pure HK, Martin and Shen his lovely partner Willow up at Chums of the Dow, there's no monetary exchange there. It's purely energy exchange, and that's totally cool with me. However, there is obviously an outlay, and there's time, and there's money and discipline to maintain something like this. So, look, while I can see it would be a meme that everybody's got a podcast in Australia now, it seems to have reached that point. Don't diss it, because those people that are trying to start a podcast, like the young fellas that are Descending the Rabbit Hole podcast that were on last week, they're trying. You know what I mean? They're turning up to try and do something for whatever reason it is, whatever they want to dig into. And whilst I do agree that not everybody should have a voice, that's the world we live in now. And at least if people are trying to talk and trying to share with themselves, their own opinions and think that they may be able to contribute something to society, then let them go. Let them have a go at it. You know what I mean? I think that's very important. Because I had a giggle when I saw that meme, and it was actually one of the listeners of the podcast that posted it, which is, it's quite funny. But we just need to be respectful about people who are trying to give their 10 cents. You know what I mean? Because at least they're trying to give it a go, And I think a lot of times we mock people when they are doing something that we're scared to do and not willing to do, So just be aware of that. And it's weird times. We just had the election here in Australia, and I think because of Woody, I was more invested in this election than I probably have ever been before. And to be honest, I was quite disappointed with the result. I had a dream where, we would embrace more independence than, voting the Liberal government back into the majority. I was a bit disappointed, and look, maybe it's the old anarchist in me, from when I was a 20-something that just wants to throw a stick in the spokes and just see what happens, not more of the same over and over and over again, because it doesn't seem to be serving us. What's happening at the moment doesn't seem to be serving us. Things are having their day. I think the capitalistic, materialistic society is beginning to have its day because it doesn't work, okay? We've talked about this before in the podcast where we're trying to have an infinite growth model on a linear scale. There's only so much stuff that this earth has that we can take and turn into crap and then put into landfill. We are, we are definitely impacting the planet in what we're doing. And we need to be aware of that, And I think the superpowers that once were, America is teetering on the brink, China is rising. These things are changing, and the next 10 to 20 years is going to be a very interesting time to be alive, because I think all the things that we have been led to believe in have been, like I've said before, they're total bullshit. There's no major institution anymore that is actually seen to be honest and true. At the end of it, it's all greed-based, bullshit-based, and money-based, which doesn't help anyone. It doesn't serve anyone apart from themselves. And it's hard not to talk about conspiracies. Is it the elite that are feeding it and all this sort of stuff? It's hard not to go down that track. However, it just seems to be that way. You know what I mean? It's 20% of the world's, something like 1% of the world's population have 80% of the money or something ridiculous like that. However, in order for capitalism to work, there's got to be poor people, there's got to be super rich people. That's how the system works, keeps it rolling. However, I think what's happening, because it is weird times, there seems to be a lot of tests coming up at the moment. There seems to be a lot of tests. There's been a lot of tests in my own life, personally and with my family and friends and all those sorts of things. We seem to be all facing a lot of tests, and it seems to be that we're being tested to see what our mettle is. What are you actually doing? Are you serious about what you're doing, or are you just fucking around? Because if you're just fucking around, then, move on. However, if you're not, take the test, do the best you can, move on and keep moving forward. Because it's just about forward movement. And look, I know for myself personally, forward movement's been very difficult at the moment. There's been a lot of tests for myself personally and professionally and emotionally, spiritually, physically, you know. However, that's life, you know. And I suppose the thing is, it's like, is it weird times just in my microcosm? Have I look globally and it seems to be weird times everywhere, weird times globally, you know. It's not all negative, and this is the thing about it, is that with everything there is contrast, and we've talked a lot about that as well, where there's positive and negative to all this stuff, and even all the negative stuff that supposedly my perception is, the negative things that have been happening to me of late, I see them at the end of the day as a positive thing, because once I've gotten through that and looked at it and been able to see it for what it is, it's actually been a very positive thing. You got to remember that negativity or negative emotions, negative feelings, they're coming up for a reason. There seems to be a lot of stuff rising to the surface, a lot of trauma, a lot of old things, a lot of old patterns, a lot of old belief systems, a lot of old, theories that we used to live by. And you're being tested, you're being told, is that still what you're doing? That's cool. I mean, it's up to you. You want to stay in your old patterns and your old traumas and live up to that shit, then that's fine, okay? However, if you want to move on and you want to, evolve and really, be part of this movement, and look, I do agree that, because we hang around people that are of our, we hang around people that are like-minded with us. So I can say, there's a movement of people growing because I'd like to attract those people to my life, you know what I mean? And like attracts like. However, it does seem that there is a movement. There is a global movement of people being more awake and more aware. And, awakened and enlightened, they're such loaded terms. However, I think it's more about awareness. It's not necessarily about being awake or enlightened. I think more and more people, because of, the cost of living is continually going up and, the pay's not going up. Everything is such, it's all bullshit, basically. And people are beginning to be aware of that. They may not be seeking themselves out spiritually or emotionally, but at least people are, with the internet, one of the things the internet has done is given us a global communication network. And we can actually see that we're not actually that much different from each other. My brother's in Russia at the moment, and as from a Western society, the things we've heard about Russia over the years, it's hard to know what's true and what's not, because that's the media cherry picking what they want to tell us. However, the things that he's telling me is that the Russian people are a beautiful people. They have some beautiful food and culture, and just an awesome people to work with. Now, if we were to take the perception that we've been given for the last 50 years. We wouldn't agree with that, but because, my brother and I were very similar in that we're very open-minded, he went there with an open mind, just wanted to accept people for who they are. And like we've said 1,000 times, you approach 99% of people with respect and, and friendliness, and they're going to be the same to you. You know what I mean? It's team human, right? We really need to get our minds around that. And I think we're being tested to see whether or not we truly believe that, because the reality is, with all the current systems failing, like I've said before, I really don't think they're not going to make us try and shoot each other again, and that'll be the big test. Do we actually allow them to make us kill each other again for nothing, for their ground, for their money, for their industrial complex that they like to feed their economy, which is built on a house of sand, you know what I mean, or on a platform of sand? It's nothing. It's FUBAR. It's pixie dust. It doesn't exist. Majority of the world's money doesn't exist, and money's just a construct that we've agreed on. One of the beautiful things about this podcast is it is actually an energy exchange. I'm happy to have anyone on the podcast if they want to come on and they've got something to sell or whatever. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. Let's just talk about it. I understand that this is just a humble podcast. Excuse me. And However, the reach that this podcast is having is growing on a month-by-month basis. So let's be cool about that. You know what I mean? And am I open to this podcast making money? Of course I am, but I'm not going to advertise Coca-Cola or some, something that I don't believe in. Whoever ends up sponsoring this podcast in a monetary sense will have to be pretty good. I'm not going to sell out. There's no way that I would do that just to make a buck. This is my passion project. I'd rather it stay pure than sell out to something else just to make some money, But then, it's quite fascinating that I say that, but everybody's got a price. One of the podcasts coming up is on morality. Where do morals come from, and what are the set of morals? Is it an inbuilt thing in our DNA? Because that's coming up. I've been looking and listening to a lot of philosophy and a lot of moral ethics and a lot of PhD, really intelligent people that have been talking about this stuff and wrote books about it. And the interesting thing is that they're not really sure. You know what I mean? It's fascinating how these big, massive questions, even though we've had hundreds of years to, from hundreds of years to process them and ask ourselves, because of the world we've created is a world of luxury, let's be honest, to be able to ponder these questions, and they're still pondering them. Because I think, some of these systems that they're based around don't necessarily work. A lot of these people, these ancient philosophers and stuff like that, they got to the end of their lives and they were still asking these questions, And as I say, it's weird times. I think these questions keep coming up to those that are asking them to try and get some clarity. The thing is that it seems to be that the answers are the answers. You know what I mean? There's multiple paths that you have to take to get to the answer. However, the answer itself is still the answer. Be true to yourself. Sort your own shit out. Face your demons. Don't be a victim of your past beliefs or traumas or systems of behaviour that don't serve you or anyone else around you. And let's just all try and get along. However, it seems to be a long and winding road. There's been... I love memes. I'm pretty much on social media for the memes because I think, A, some of them are bloody hilarious, and B, some of them are very profound. It's like there's one floating around at the moment where it's people only see the tip of the iceberg, whereas 3/4 of the iceberg's underneath, and the tip of the iceberg is you being a successful person. Underneath is discipline. It's facing your demons. It's day-to-day physical activity. It's motivation. It's all the things that actually come that people don't see behind the scenes that make you be the person you are. And that's important, that you don't know the person's story. However, at the same time, that person is responsible for their own story as well. You can only help them so much. At some point, they've got to, whoever it is, got to put their big boy pants on and realise that they're doing things that don't serve anyone and sort their shit out. That's the whole reason that I did this. When I first started this, it was I met my wife and I wanted to sort my own shit out because she didn't deserve my shit. You know what I mean? I figured out that it had to be for me. It's still for her, and my kids and my family and, my loved ones and my friends and all that sort of stuff. I try and be the best person I can for everybody. The reality is it's got to be for me first, because if you can't do it for you, you've got to do it for you. You can use other people as a reason. However, at some point you've got to realise that you got to do it for you, And these times are testing, and I think they're testing us to see where we actually stand. What is your stance on this stuff? Stand in your power and actually take responsibility and keep moving. Don't stop. Keep moving forward. Yeah? Because it's difficult. And when I think about, I haven't posted a lot of fitness. I used to do a lot of fitness posts, like, Facebook's regurgitating my posts from a year ago. There's a lot of rides and a lot of gym photos and all that sort of stuff. Don't think that I've stopped any of that, because I haven't. You know what I mean? I'm trying to push at least 100 Ks a month on the bike. I'm at least doing sit-ups, push-ups, stretching every single day. I try and get gym routines in as well. but I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a professional, I work full time, my wife's got a business. These things are hard to maintain, and I have been maintaining them. And I suppose the reason I stopped putting those posts up is that, I don't know, I thought it was a bit wanky, to be honest. It was, and I suppose I didn't feel like putting that stuff out there. I really wanted to put a more profound message out there, and just some beautiful shots to people to lose themselves in. However, don't think, that I've stopped doing that. I've maintained a weight of around 83, 84 kilos for over a year now. Now, that's actually pretty massive in my world. Of course, I've gone one way and I've gone the other, and I'm sort of preparing myself for my next big push to get rid of what's remaining of my love handles, which, however, the fact that I've maintained that for over a year is very cool. And anyone that does that, anyone's maintained anything they're doing for a year or 2 years, especially with the endless distractions that we have in this society at the moment, they need to be applauded. So that's not facetious. I'm seriously applauding you guys that have been staying on the path, whatever your path is. There's a hanging that I'm looking at as I record this, and it says, "Become loyal to your innermost truth. Follow the way when all others abandon it. Walk the path of your own heart." That's something that I look at. Where I sit in the studio, that I look at that all the time, and that's so true. I'll say it again. Become loyal to your innermost truth. Follow the way when all others abandon it. Walk the path of your own heart. Figure out what that path is, guys. And if you are in testing times, there's always a silver lining. You're either winning, or you're learning, or you're just being alive. The contrast of being alive in this three-dimensional meat sack, and just try and take your time as best you can, okay? One of the biggest lessons that me and my wife learned was from the bloody Frozen movie that our daughters love, and it's you make bad decisions when you're scared or mad or stressed. So before you make a crazy decision, take a step back, take a deep breath, and try and figure out whether that's the right decision. Okay? Because you don't want to make decisions when you're in that negative mindset. You can make decisions that will reverberate forever. Okay? And I know a lot of people are under test at the moment, and a lot of people are scared and mad and stressed. And I've been that way lately, at times. And it's taken immense discipline. All the discipline I have working through my anger and working through my emotions and working through all the bullshit that I've been working through over the last 2 years to not lose my shit at times. And I'm still not perfect at it. No one ever is, and no one ever will be. And I think that's the thing. We have a twisted view that there's this place where everything will be perfect. That's not how it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if anyone thinks that, and I burst your bubble when I say that, but it's not. It's just not how it is. You got to do the best you can with what you got at the time that you have it. Yeah? And I think it's not perfect, and nothing will ever be perfect. However, if you can make it enjoyable, if you can be content, if you can face your traumas and your past and the belief systems that don't serve you, look them in the eye and deal with them, you can make your present and then therefore your future a little bit brighter. Okay? And what the world's going to do is what the world's going to do. However, you need to affect yourself first, and then once you sort yourself out, you can help others, and then once you help others, you can move out into the community. Once you move out in the community, you can start spreading this. It's the butterfly effect that, you can have the flap of the wings, you know what I mean, can affect into infinity, As I see the podcast grow and morph and change, and as I say, more people getting in contact with me and thanking me for, the guests that we've had on, the conversation we've had, it's truly humbling. And it makes me want to double down and do better. And I tell you what, in my testing times that I've had, when I've had lack of motivation and lack of discipline, you guys, the listeners of this podcast, have actually been what I've drawn upon, okay? You guys make me want to be better. And if every day all you do is try and just be a little bit better than you were the day before, then guess what? You've had a successful day. I think that's enough out of me, guys. I really appreciate your time. Let's end this with Bathe in the Sun, because I think that's just such a cool song, and it epitomises a lot of the stuff we talk about on the podcast. As I say, I've got 3 episodes in the bag already. Got some really cool ones coming up. I might release a couple in over a week or something like that, just to get some more content out there, because there's been some really cool conversations. However, I feel better of getting all that out of my head, and I hope that it made sense to some of you and maybe gave you a different perspective. Look after yourselves. Be cool. Keep hustling. Stay disciplined. Stay motivated. Remember, just a millimetre a day. That's all you got to do. Not even that. 1/10 of a millimetre. Just try and move forward. Try and be better than you were the day before. And it's going to suck. Things suck sometimes. Life sucks. The universe is a fucking cunt sometimes. However, at the same time, there's always the other way. Okay? And you can learn from those bad experiences if you choose to. Thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate your time. We'll talk soon. Cheers.
Today I sat in a field of paper daisies. The gentle breeze made the world wave to me. The day has come with a gold ring wrapped around it. I think I might just bathe in the sun. And I hope my world don't crash in over me, just like it did yesterday. I'm pretty sure the last mirror that I cracked was one of 7 years ago. And I don't want to wear those bullet holes no more. I want to kill my nightmare. And I've done nothing wrong to anyone. Then I just want to be better, better than who I am, better than who I am, better than who I am, better than who I am. Moonlit river flows by gently, like the ocean made from the earth. It is healing all of my inner bleeding, even though it's only pictures in my mind. And I hope my world don't crash in over me, just like it did yesterday. I'm pretty sure the last mirror that I cracked was from 7 years ago. And I don't want to wear these bullet holes no more. I want to kill my nightmare. Don't stick those pins in the dog that looks like me. I'm burning up. 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 I'm burning. Today I sat in a field of paper daisies. The gentle breeze made the world wave to me. The day has come with a gold ring wrapped around it. I think I might just bathe in